Hey everyone, and welcome to SkillCap's Guide on Tilting. In this video, we'll give you an understanding of the effects of tilt and how to prevent them. Learning about what tilt is and how to cope with tilt will save you from endless loss streaks and increase your effectiveness in games. The contents we'll be going over in this video are what tilt is in League of Legends, and lastly, we'll mention some steps to take to prevent it. So, what is tilt? Tilt comes from poker, meaning emotional distress or emotional confusion, which is usually expressed in an aggressive manner. This is also the case with League of Legends. It's when we play poorly and make a lot of mistakes. This state of mind causes loss streaks and lack of enjoyment in our games. So what ends up happening is we tend to play more aggressively and carelessly when we're tilted. Tilt also means being incapable of making good decisions. So we make decisions based on anger and frustration rather than thinking things through, which is especially harmful in ranked games. Our logic and reasoning is clouded with emotion. Now, I'm not saying that every time you're on a loss streak you're on tilt, but it's pretty easy to go down that road and end up moving down the rank ladder. So why do we tilt? What is the scientific explanation behind it? Tilt in League is caused by what's called amygdala hijack. The amygdala is responsible for processing and making decisions. It also reacts to emotions such as fear in our brain. Amygdala hijack causes what most of you may know as our fight or flight response, which has been evolutionarily useful since it causes us to snap into a different state of mind extremely quickly. As an example, if you encountered a hungry bear in the middle of the forest, your fight or flight response allows you to instantly activate the "oh shit" button. However, our brain has trouble defining what a real threat is. In the case of a bear, it's pretty clear cut, but how about when you lose 6 games in League of Legends? It turns out our brain activates the same mechanism demonstrated in our bear example. In light of this, let's quickly go over the pathway of the signal. So you have a threat, an example being dying over and over again. After you perceive this through your senses, this threat is picked up by the thalamus region of your brain. The threat is then distributed to your neocortex and your amygdala. Your neocortex, which we haven't talked about yet, is also known as your thinking brain. It's associated with high cognitive function and what we use constantly, especially in a ranked game of League of Legends. Your amygdala also receives this stimulus and checks with your hippocampus to verify this threat. Your hippocampus says yes and sends this yes back to your amygdala. You're confirmed to be in emotional distress, so your amygdala will trigger the HPA axis. All you need to know about this is that it produces stress hormones in response, activating a sympathetic response or the fight or flight response. This then inhibits our cognitive processing, or in other words, shuts down our neocortex, stopping us from making decisions based off of logic and reason. In the case of League of Legends, you act carelessly, you rage, you flash when you normally wouldn't. Basically, you're on tilt, and getting out of amygdala hijack during a game is extremely hard, especially since you can see your score throughout the game, and let's be real, your teammates probably aren't very understanding of your situation. So let's talk about what tilts us in League of Legends. This is extremely important, as we've been discussing and will discuss throughout this course. Being aware of what causes psychological distress, in this case tilt, will ready up our subconscious mind, ultimately allowing us to avoid the effects. Some examples include First Blood. We usually associate First Blood with snowballing, and unfortunately it's announced, making it kind of hard to ignore. This might break our confidence right off the bat and make us emotionally vulnerable to what can come. Another great one is feeding. Doesn't matter if you or your team is feeding, each one can directly impact your performance. Miscommunication between teammates is also a good one. For example, you might think your jungler is ganking your lane by the way he's moving around the minimap, but he's actually just grabbing scuttle or invading the enemy jungle. Without your jungler's intention in mind, you might play a little more aggressively than you normally would and end up giving a kill. As a last note, throwing a game could also cause in-game tilt. For example, your team is super far ahead, but you end up losing a teamfight and Baron. Okay, so we now understand what tilt is and some examples on how we can become tilted in-game. Now let's switch it up to cumulative tilting. This is where the stressing events from other games slowly add up, causing you to tilt before you even get into the game. Players who lose games consecutively start having trouble winning their future games because they lose the game in their head before it even starts. Some other things that can add up to your tilt counter is failing your promotional matches, or more commonly, patterns in games. Our brains love picking up patterns because it's easy to do and serves as an evolutionary advantage. For example, if your top laner lost his lane last game and your current top laner just gave his first blood, you might end up tilting purely from the thought of your previous top laner. Patterns can also apply to everything we listed for in-game tilting. The summary of the story is that anything negatively happening in succession might cause tilt. Now, let's talk about some of the things we can do to prevent tilt. The first step is being aware of it. We've already covered tilt and how it happens, so you're good to go on that. Next, you need to identify your specific tilt triggers. It might be something we discussed in the past sections or something totally different. Paying attention to these specific triggers will be extremely helpful in dealing with tilt. The next one is probably the hardest step to take. Don't put all your value to wins. This usually contradicts the idea of ranked games, especially since we want to climb the ladder as quickly as possible. However, it's crucial to get past this point and put more value on learning, which you can do here for a low price of $6.99. But seriously, by learning the game, winning the game will come eventually and naturally. Then there's also accepting the occasional loss. Whether you lost the game because of a close fight or an AFK, deviate your attention from the loss and direct it towards learning. Take the game you just played, find and reinforce your strong points, and work on the weaknesses. This will distract your mind from tilt and will ultimately help you become a better player. As an important last note, make sure to take a break after an emotionally exhausting game. Look back to see the game's effect on you. Are you actually completely ready for another? If the answer isn't anything but a resounding and immediate yes, then go ahead and give yourself a break. Let your stress hormones degrade from your body while doing things to help yourself relax. Breathe deeply and try to relax yourself. This will increase blood flow to your brain and regulate your heart rate. Personally, I like to take a break every 2 games, win or lose. Well, that concludes this guide on tilt. Thanks for watching everyone, and I hope you've picked up a few things. See you next time.